Obesity has become a major problem in the world in the last 2 decades. Most health experts believe that we are currently in an obesity epidemic. Even the WHO classifies obesity as reaching epidemic proportions, with 2.8 million people at the very least dying from complications due to obesity every year. As per the WHO reports, 16% of the adults aged above 18 were obese in 2022. Now, that might not sound concerning to some, but it most certainly is a number that we need to be worried about. It's not hard to notice this out in the real world when we're out grocery shopping or at the movies or traveling. In this video, we won't be talking about the health issues that obesity causes. There are thousands of videos out there by real doctors discussing those issues and how to combat them. No, in this video, we talk about what brought us here and how capitalism is leading us into a trap that we might not be able to get out of. This video is a part of a long-term documentary series on obesity. Please subscribe to the channel if you like it and share the video if you are able to. As a new channel, it would give us the motivation to keep making the content we love. Chapter 1. Greed. There is a discussion on why obesity is much more of a problem now than it was 20 years ago. Not a lot changed in the last 20 years, biologically speaking. We didn't suddenly evolve glands that would automatically make 1 in 5 people obese in the world. So, is it individual? Well, it can't be, can it? Is it just people deciding that they don't have the willpower to not be obese anymore? Well, no. Surely, if something is individual, it wouldn't be so widespread. The answer lies in greed and discrimination. The ineffective policy making of our governments has led us to this obesity epidemic, combined with the lax regulations in food control. Socioeconomic status contributes massively towards determining whether a person will be obese or not. If you were born into a poor or middle class family like I was, you know the cost effectiveness of processed food. A bag of chips and a cup of ice cream costs less than a bag of fresh potatoes. The power it takes to cook, and most importantly, the time. It's convenient, just like fast food. It takes a lot more than $1 to make a burger from scratch at home than going to the drive-thru and getting a burger for $1. You cannot tell someone that their socioeconomic background doesn't impact their health. It is one of the most critical factors that a lot of professionals fail to consider or acknowledge due to the complexities involved. Greed takes many forms. Taking advantage of the low-income population is the worst side of it. In the HBO documentary, The Weight of the Nation, the crew explores a couple of shops in a low-income neighborhood and finds some of the processed foods, like chips and soda, cost less here than they do in some of the high-income neighborhoods.
This area, this bag is 25 cents. You go to City Line Avenue in a vending machine, this bag will be 75 cents on up. And it won't be marked 25 cents. So it starts with the company.
Right, they charge a little more in the neighborhoods where they can make up for the cost, and they keep it cheap here and move product.
Is there anything that you're able to sell that's on the healthier side that competes price-wise with this?
Not at all. For 25 cents?
And the reason could not be clearer to a baby. Would highly recommend watching the original documentary to anyone interested. Link is in the description. The items are so priced to take advantage of the people living there. Because if the items were sold at the higher price, people would hesitate to buy them and go for a different item, maybe fresh produce even. Unfortunately, this is not just the case in the US. Companies engage in this behavior all over the world, dragging developing nations into obesity as well. Several developing countries like India have seen a sharp rise in the obesity levels in the past 2 decades, mostly owing to the globalization of the food industry. However, it's still lower than some of the developed nations like the United Kingdom or the United States, where obesity is slowly getting its grip on the majority of the population. During my research, I was terribly sad to find out that there are programs for kids in the United Kingdom to get the medical intervention for being overweight or obese, as their families are unable to deal with the issue anymore. According to the UK government, obesity costs the NHS around £6.5 billion a year and is the second biggest preventable cause of cancer. As the UK wades its way through a cost of living crisis and years of unstable governments, this effect is even more pronounced in the suburban and rural towns, and it is set to take an undeniable toll on the post-Brexit economy. While trying to find some scientific evidence for my, and probably everyone's hunch, of big food being at least partly responsible for the obesity epidemic, I came across an incredible paper in the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health. The paper is linked to in the description. It talks about the Commercial Determinants of Health. The World Health Organization defines commercial determinants of health as the conditions, actions, and omissions by corporate actors that affect health. Commercial determinants arise in the context of the provision of goods or services for payment and include commercial activities as well as the environment in which commerce takes place. They can have beneficial or detrimental impacts on health. The definition is still in the works as per the paper, but its meaning still stands. Commercial determinants are factors that determine the health driven by the baseline, that is, profit. The paper goes on to detail the impact of commercial determinants on even infectious diseases like COVID-19. It's a simple concept, really. The companies advertise food that can lead to several life-threatening issues like obesity and diabetes. If you have any of these issues, you are more likely to be hospitalized due to COVID. I'm sure we all learned associative principle in math when we were kids. A equals to B equals to C. Ergo, A equals to C. The paper goes on to mention that health experts are calling for corporations to be treated with a vectors of disease model, a model in which we treat the disease-spreading entities as vectors. In this case, the big food. When we think of greed, we usually attribute it to a person, not an entity. Greed is rare in nature. Greed is not present in the primal law of nature. It is a psychological construct that can and must be attributed to corporations as well as individuals. In fact, I believe corporate greed should be made into its own subfield and studied extensively as we head more and more towards a corporate-dominated world. How is the obesity epidemic different from the opioid epidemic? Both are, in part, promoted by the greed of companies. The greed of never having enough. This is the real gluttony, the worst of the sins. Accumulating wealth and resources all to yourself while harming others knowingly. The opioid epidemic was quick acting and we found ways to deal with it quickly. The obesity epidemic is a slow and deadly one. It affects everyone from kids as young as 4 to senior citizens. If we don't recognize the role of corporate greed in spreading obesity, we might as well be trying to put out a fire with an oxygen tank. Reading through the paper, I felt like I finally found what I wanted to put in words. And if you want to read one paper this week, let it be this. You will not be disappointed. In the next video in the series, we will take a look at the evolutionary reason that the companies are taking advantage of and how obesity rates are rapidly rising throughout the world. If you liked the video, please share and subscribe. Don't forget to drink some water.